Before we get into today's video, I did want to let you guys know that this video is for entertainment purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody everywhere in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. Good morning, my lovelies, my beauties, my friends. My name is Christina and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really hope that you will subscribe, stick around, take a chance in hearing some things that I have to say. And if you are a returning subscriber, y'all already know. Y'all are my babies. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. I hope you all had a wonderful week full of lots of love and laughter and all the good stuff. I hope nobody had a bad day. Nobody. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the story about Israel Keys. And this is another one of these stories that I am so confused why it's not everywhere. Like, why isn't there 15 documentaries made about this? Why aren't we talking about this? You guys know how I roll with this. I'm going to tell you guys the story, and then at the end, I'm going to give you guys some final thoughts and my opinions about everything, because I always have opinions. So let's just start at the beginning. Israel Keys was just a degular looking guy. Very well known in his community. He had a construction business at some point. Like, he always did really good work. He was labeled a doting father. However,
people never expect stuff to happen.
So we'll just start at Israel's childhood. Israel Keys was born in Cove, Utah in January of 1978. He was born to his mother and father, who was Heidi and Jeffrey Keys. He was one of 10 children. He was the second oldest and the first oldest boy. His older sister was a sister, and then it was him, and then he had 8 siblings younger than him. And he grew up in a very religious family. I mean, these were the type of people that it was all about us versus them, versus the world, versus anybody that doesn't believe us or isn't part of our church or doesn't look like us, that type of thing. When Israel was about 2 or 3 years old, him and his family ended up moving to Washington. And in Washington, his parents bought this big old giant piece of property way up like in the mountains or the woods. The reason why they chose this piece of property was because it was completely secluded from any neighbors or anybody else. And the driveway to get up there was like almost impossible to get up there. And when they moved up there, they lived in tents. They had no running water, no electricity, and they never did. Eventually, over time, Israel's father would build the family a 1-bedroom cabin, still did not have any running water, still did not have any power, and this is where they lived at, up in the woods, secluded from everybody. And the only place that Israel and his siblings really went was to church. They went to 2 different churches. They were homeschooled by their mother, and that was just it. He had no neighborhood friends. He had none of those experiences, no water parks, no none of that. It was just in the woods doing what he was doing. Now, I told you that his family was very religious. Well, his parents were very religious. I don't know about his siblings. They were even involved in, like, part of their church was allegedly part of like a white supremacy group. So they also did not believe in any kind of government interference at all of their lives or any kind of medicine, modern medicine. Everything was done right there out in the woods with them. In Israel, when he was a little kid, he would go hunting and stuff for fun. Like, he would go out hunting and catching frogs and stuff. And he said that when he was 14 years old, that is when he realized that he was different than the other kids or maybe other people, because he enjoyed things that the other kids didn't.
I've known since I was 14 that there was things that I thought were normal and that were okay that nobody else seems to think are normal and okay.
He told this story. One time he took a cat out into the woods and he had his friends with him. And trigger warning, I'm going to talk about some animal stuff. So skip to this right here. If you guys can't hear it, I understand. The whole video is going to be a trigger warning, just letting you guys know. It's going to be some pretty gruesome. This is going to be a rough one, you guys. He went out into the woods with his friends. He took this cat and he tied the cat to the tree, okay? Then he shot the cat in the stomach. And as the cat was freaking out and running around like hurt and trying to escape and, has been shot, he stood there at the cat laughing as the cat was struggling with its stomach all out and everything.
I mean, I actually kind of laughed a little, but then I looked over and the kid who was about my age was throwing up. Like, he was really, I don't know, traumatized, I guess you would say.
And in that moment, he realized, like, wait a minute, why don't they think this is cool? Like, he realized that he was different. He said before that, he always thought that everybody around him was faking because he always felt like this evilness or this urge to do things. He would go out into the woods and he would sit for hours just sitting. He thought he was so like awesome because he could just go into the woods and sit for 10, 12, 24 hours and not move a muscle and just sit there in pure silence. Like, that was something that he did for fun. And then he would also go out there and hunt animals and kill animals, and he even would torture animals. When Israel got to be a teenager, he started to really rebel. At this point, he decided he didn't want to be part of their religious group anymore and that he was going to study Satanism. And that's what he was going to be. He was going to study Satanism, and he started looking into that. During this time as well, he started to break into cars and homes and steal things like from people's houses or anything that he could find, and he just did this as a sport. This was his excitement. This is what he did for fun. Right around this time is when his father found out that he was no longer claiming to be a part of his religious group that he was a part of, and so his father disowned him. His mother stood by his side and, still kind of was his mother, but his father did not want to speak to him anymore. He was basically dead to him. As he got into his older teens, around 17, 18 years old, this is when Israel would later say he committed his first admitted SA on somebody, or grape without the G, right? He said that he was kind of like at this campsite or this hiking place or whatever, and one of these girls that was with her family or her group had got separated from them. And he had been out there in the woods watching. He wanted to quench this thirst that he had to move away from animals and kind of graduate into people. And he saw this girl who had gotten lost and separated from her group, and he went over to her, he snatched her, he took her into some kind of bathroom that they had there, and the story was told that she really started working him. Like, she was telling him things like, oh my gosh, you're so handsome. Like, why are you doing this? Like, you don't have to do this. Like, I would probably even go out with you, because he was going to SA her. And he had planned on SAing her and then killing her.
And she knew I was going to kill her.
But she just kind of really worked him, and he did what he did to her, and then he let her go. Israel would later say for 2 years afterwards, every single day, he beat himself up. Like, you're so stupid. Why did you let her go? You should have just finished her off. Why did you let her go? And he vowed to himself after that he would never, no matter what anybody says, ever let somebody go again. In July of 1998, when Israel was 20 years old, he joined the U.S. Army. And in the Army, Israel absolutely excelled as a soldier. I mean, he was good. I mean, you can only imagine the things that he had been doing, the way he had been living without water and power and all of that. I mean, he already knew how to sacrifice. It was built into him, how to live without, and also how to see things that maybe would traumatize me and you. He was completely fine with. He enjoyed it. So he did really good in the Army. He was stationed in Egypt. He was then stationed at Fort Hood. You guys know about Fort Hood with the Vanessa situation, Vanessa Gillian. And then later at Fort Lewis. The only trouble that Israel got into in the military was he got a DUI, but other than that, nothing else was reported or he admitted to. While Israel was at Fort Lewis, he got into a relationship with a young woman, and she became pregnant with a little girl, which was then Israel's baby girl. He stayed with her for about 6 years and then would later say that she was on drugs and she was an alcoholic, and so he took his daughter and he left. He started dating another girl, and in 2007, he moved to Anchorage, Arkansas with him, his new girlfriend, and his daughter. And not long after that, he was honorably discharged from the military. So now he's living in Arkansas with his girlfriend and his daughter, and he starts working, and this is where he built his construction business, Keys Construction. Israel's co-workers would later say he was a doting father. Like every time he would come to work, he would talk about all the cute little things his little daughter was doing, and like he just was a good, nice guy, very hard worker, very reputable. His company was very much trusted, and before you know it, his construction company, he started traveling all over the country to do construction work. Well, while he started traveling, he started thinking like this was his perfect time to continue to feed that thirst that he had in him. He wanted to kill people. Like he wanted that. He hungered for it. But yet he was at home being a completely different person to his girlfriend, his daughter, people that knew him, his coworkers, his family that he was still in touch with. And so he decided as he was going to travel, he was going to start setting it up. So what he would do is when he would go to different places, he would make these things called kill kits. You guys, I can't even believe this is a real thing. He really did this. He had these 5-gallon buckets, as this picture you can see right here. And in these buckets, he would have different things. Like he would have ammunition. He would have cash in these buckets. He would have pieces of shovel in these buckets. And he would take them in different places around the country and he would bury them, or he would cover them with rocks. He would put the lid on it so stuff couldn't get in it. And he would leave them there. That way, when he came back, however long later, he would already have all of the items that he needed right there. And then, I mean, it was so smart. He didn't have to go to the store and be, caught on camera buying anything. He would come back to it years later. He knew how to be patient.
As a kid, I always used to dream that I'd find buried treasure, and I figured, well, I might as well create it.
Israel would fly into a place that he was going to be working or said he was going to be working. And from there, he would rent a vehicle. And then he would rent the vehicle and then he would drive. Like say he needed to do some work in Las Vegas or something. He would like fly into LA and drive to Las Vegas. So it was still far away and he couldn't be tracked. And then once he got there, he would get like a hotel room and he would go to places that he considered to be remote or rural areas, like maybe a hiking trail that he knew people were going to be at. So he actually, in his mind, had his victims coming to him because he would go to these places and hide and wait for somebody to come. Or if he went to somebody's house, he would look at the house and he always looked for a garage because he felt like he could get in easily to a garage. He would cut the phone lines because to him, he said that took care of the alarm systems. He would always look in the backyard and make sure there was no kids or no animals because to him, kids just complicated things and animals were allowed. So he had this whole plan going on. In April of 2009, Israel went to Essex, Vermont, and there he went ahead and planted a kill kit, okay? 2 years later, he went back there, got his kill kit and decided that he was going to scope it out and find somebody to do what he needed to do to fulfill his sick desires. He landed on this house that he said was the perfect house.
I think I even had it pegged down just from looking at the outside because of the way they had their backyard set up. It just looked like an older couple that didn't have kids kind of house.
He said the house was like kind of in the back of the neighborhood. There was a wooded area by it. He checked out the backyard. There was no toys. There was no dogs. It had a garage. He thought this is the perfect spot. So he sat outside and he waited for these people to come home, and he waited hours. On June 9th of 2011, Israel Keys breaks into the home of Lorraine and Bill Currier. They were 49 and 55 years old, and they had been married for almost 25 years. They didn't have any children. They had some birds that they would let like fly around roam free in the house and stuff. They loved to just be together. They were homebodies. They were family people, but they never had any kids, and it was just them two living in this house. When they got home that night and they just ate dinner, settled in, put on their pajamas, and went to bed, he waited until the right time. He broke into the garage by removing a fan that was in the garage somehow, and he crawled through that area. Then he took a crowbar that was actually already in the garage, and he broke the glass. And he said that By the time he got that door open, it was 4 or 5 seconds and he was in their room. Boom. It was a blitz attack. He had zip ties. He tied one of them up, and within 5 seconds, he had the other one tied up. I mean, it all happened. Boom, boom, boom. I mean, this is what he had been doing as a kid in the woods. That's all he had. He didn't have no TV. He didn't have no bikes to ride with his friends. Like, he had been doing this with animals, so he was a professional. When he got them all tied up, he said that they, of course, started begging, and that the husband, Bill, was a fighter. I mean, he's 55 years old. He was 6 foot tall, 220 pounds. I mean, he was a big old guy, and he was fighting, but Israel was still managed to get them tied up. After he got them tied up, he got them in his vehicle, and he started traveling to an abandoned house that he knew was somewhere in the area. So he starts to remove Bill from the vehicle and take him into the abandoned house. And I mean, he is fighting. He is fighting tooth or nail. And when he gets him into the house, he ends up hitting him in the head with a shovel and then just shooting him, pow, 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 until he is dead. And Israel said that he typically did not like to shoot people. He would rather strangle them because he enjoyed that, and he didn't like the noise and the mess that it made to shoot them, but he just couldn't control himself. By the time he was done with that and he went back out to the vehicle to get his wife, Lorraine, out, she had already escaped from the zip ties and was starting to run towards the highway, and he ran after her. He jumped on her, he drug her back, he hit her, and then he SA'd her. After he SA'd her, he took her into the room where her husband was, made her look at her husband's dead body, and then he took a rope from behind and he strangled her to death. And he strangled her while she was looking at her husband's dead body. After that, he took both of the bodies over to like this corner area of this abandoned house where there was a bunch of debris at. He put their bodies in 55-gallon garbage bags, put them under all of that debris, poured some Drano on them in order to get rid of any kind of DNA, and he left them there. Well, he covered them up with debris first, and then he left them there. He drove back to the airport, got on his plane, flew home, crawled into the bed with his girlfriend and his daughter, and acted like nothing ever happened. Their bodies would actually never be found, and more on that later, but that is just so sad. Israel would later say once he started doing stuff like that, there was no going back. There was no stopping him. It reminds me of like the Ted Bundy situation. Like, these people that are like this, once they act on that urge, it's like they can't stop. Like, there's no going back now. They just don't want to live their life without that in it. And investigators would later say that they had a new kind of monster on their hands, something that they had never seen or experienced before. Israel would later go on to attack and do all of these things to many other people. But the one that really sealed his fate was the one that happened in February of 2012. See, Israel would break his golden rule, I guess you would say, and he started looking at this roadside coffee shop that was in his city of Anchorage, Alaska. And it was like this little tiny like drive-through coffee shop. And he knew that it was typically like young people that worked there, young girls, young guys. It didn't matter to him. As you guys know the story before, that was a man and a woman. Like, to him, it did not matter. He preferred women because to him, he wanted to make sure it was somebody that was completely helpless against him. However, he had been kind of stalking out this coffee shop. A young 18-year-old girl by the name of Samantha was working at this coffee shop on this evening, and she lived at home with her dad and her boyfriend of about 9.5 months, and she didn't drive. So her boyfriend, when he would get off of work, he would just come straight there to the coffee shop and pick her up, and she would be closing up the coffee shops at nighttime. Well, on this particular evening, when he came to pick her up, she was not there. The whole entire coffee shop was dark. Nobody was there. He looked in, he texted her, she hears no response. He calls her dad, doesn't know where she's at. So he goes ahead and goes home. He thinks, okay, maybe she got a ride with somebody. I mean, that's completely unlike her. He picked her up every single night. But nevertheless, he went ahead and went home. He was sitting at the table with her dad, like they're like, okay, where is she? When he receives a text message from Samantha's phone. The text message basically reads that she needed a few days away. She just needed to get away from everything. She was just stressed out. So she went to go stay with her friends for a little while. Samantha's boyfriend and father knew right then and there that something was terribly wrong. This was not like Samantha. She didn't have friends she would run away to. She was completely happy. They had a great relationship. She was a daddy's girl. She was very close with her father. There's no way she would do this. But they just kind of didn't know what to do. He also said that he could tell by the way the text message was written that she did not write that. The next morning came, and when they did not hear from Samantha again, they went and contacted the local authorities and the police. The cops would then contact the Common Grounds Coffee Shop, which was the name of that little coffee cafe, the roadside cafe, and the owner said that she would go there and look at the security camera. When they went there to look at the security camera, they saw something that they were not expecting to see. At 8 p.m. that evening, they could see a man walking up to the window on the security footage. Then the next thing you know, and you guys, here's the security footage right here. You could see Samantha, when she walked up to the window, he asked her for an Americano. She went to go make the drink, and when she went back to the window, she puts her hands up like she's startled, like, oh my gosh, like what's going on? Like, did he have a gun? Was he holding the gun? He tells her to go and turn the light off. So she goes over to turn the light off, and she's basically thinking she's just going to be robbed. Like, okay, turn the light off, do what he says. And when she turned the light off, he crawled through the window. When he crawled through the window, he got a hold of her and he took her out and he walked her and he put her in the vehicle. He put her in the vehicle and he drove her to his house. Now, at Israel's house where he lived at with his girlfriend and his baby girl, I think she was 10 years old at the time, thinking her daddy is like the king of the universe, total daddy's girl. He had a shed that was outside. And in the shed, like, was kind of like his man cave where he would work on things, different projects, play the music real loud. And his daughter and his girlfriend were not to come out there. He takes Samantha in there, he has her tied up, and he SAs her. He assaults her. Now, he would later say that she was begging for her life, saying anything she could. He was saying, okay, basically told her that he was just going to use her for ransom, that he wanted to get money, and that if she just cooperated, that he would allow her to live. And she told him, okay, I have money in my bank account, So Israel goes back up to the coffee shop. He gets her ID, like her wallet or stuff like that. He goes back to his house and he starts asking her information so he can go and get money out of her account. Not long after that, he continues to assault her. And then he does kill her. Although he said he was only going to take her for her ransom, he ended up killing her. Not long after this, Israel goes on a cruise with his family, and he takes her body and just kind of shoves it in somewhere in like a box that's in his shed where he was doing all this at. And he leaves her body there, and he goes on a cruise with his family for a week. He's traveling. He's got like flowers all around him, the leis that are there, and like just living it up. He comes back, pulls her body out, and she is completely frozen at this point. It was freezing there. He thaws her out, and he sleeps with her body again. Now, at this point, her family is looking for her hardcore. And this is still in the same town or in that area. There are posters all over looking for her, rewards, $41,000. Her dad is out speaking to the press, begging the press, basically just saying, come back and take me. You can have me. Just bring me my daughter back. I just cannot imagine how devastating that is when you're begging the camera to just bring your child home. And she was already gone at this point. Well, about 2.5 weeks later after the abduction, Israel texts her boyfriend's phone from Samantha's phone. And the text message said, Connor Park sign under Albert, ain't she pretty? And they immediately knew that this was a park that was in their area. So they told the police, and they all went there. And underneath this picture of Albert, this dog, was a piece of paper in a plastic bag tacked to that board. When they got the paper out, it was a picture of Samantha holding the newspaper to try to prove that she was alive. Well, she actually was not alive in that picture. He had taken some makeup and put it on her dead body in order to make her look alive. He braided her hair to try to make it look like she was alive. He would later say that he braided her hair the same way he braided his daughter. So 2.5 weeks later after he'd taken her, he is doing this with her body. Like taking her picture of her dead body with some makeup on it. Oh my gosh, you guys. And he sewed her eyes open. He took needle and thread and sewed her eyes open so he could take this picture. This is beyond comprehension. This is so crazy. So when the investigators showed her picture to her boyfriend and her father, it took them a minute because they had never seen her hair braided like that before, but they were like, yes, this is her. So then Israel starts texting and pretending like he's got her alive, and he wants $30,000 ransom, and he needs that $30,000 posted into her bank account, and that he was going to get the $30,000. Long story short, The investigators set up a deal with the bank that anytime her account was activated, it would send an alert to them. The problem was, though, every time they got the alert, like it still takes 2 to 3 minutes to get the cops there, and he was gone every time. So Israel started traveling around to different parts of the country and withdrawing $500 because that's the max that he could withdraw of the $30,000 that was sitting in the bank. And he got this money out a lot of times until at one point he went to this one bank, withdrew the money real quick, and when they went to go look at the security footage, they saw a white truck. And so they started looking for this white truck. And then this white truck led them to a white rental that he was using. And from the white rental, then they started telling all of the cops in that area to be looking for this specific car. And then one state trooper saw the car, which was him in the car, and he gets behind him and he wants to pull him over. So now Israel's driving in the car, and when the cops saw that he went 3 miles over the speed limit, and he pulled him over. Well, when he pulled him over, none of the investigators were expecting to find or figure out what they did. They did see that in his car when they searched his vehicle that he had her wallet, her ATM card and stuff, but they just thought that they were arresting a guy that maybe had abducted her and was wanting ransom money. They had no idea what they were going to find. When they got Israel in the jail, for a long time, he did not cooperate and tell them anything. They went to his house. They did not find her body. They could not find her body. He had done something with it at this point. And all they knew about was the situation with Samantha, but the investigators still felt like, this guy could have stole a car and it had this wallet in it. We don't know that he's actually the one that did anything. The investigators started working with him. The FBI was involved, and they started, it was so brutal to watch, you guys. The interrogations are not interrogations with Israel. They are like a kumbaya meeting because of the way they had to approach this man. This is not the type of man that you can go in and threaten because he don't care. He's literally a sociopath, psychopath, like murderer. He don't care. What are you going to do? Threaten him? Like, he kills animals and people for sport. Like, you're not going to, so they had to play his game with him and make him feel like he was the biggest, baddest, smartest in the room. And a lot of the times he was. It was so hard to watch, but I also know that that was the investigator's job. And thankfully they did that because they did find out where Samantha's body was. Israel went to this like Alaskan lake that they have there where it actually freezes over. And when I say lake, it's 700 feet deep. This ain't no lake like we got here. This is a ocean lake, basically. He cut a hole in it in order to fish. And from there, he dropped pieces of her body down in there. And he also used it as bait to fish with. And the investigator later would say, "Did you catch any fish while you were fishing there, disposing of her body?" And he said, "Yeah, of course I did." And he said, "Well, what did you do with them?" He said, "I took them home and fed them to my family." So sad. Israel also told them about the situation of the couple, Bill and Lorraine, that he did all that to. I was telling you guys about earlier in the video. They never found her body. They went back to that house and it had been demolished because a lot of squatters had been living there and it was just beyond repair. The investigators spent 2.5 months in the landfills. They covered like 13,000 yards. They were digging in trash for months and months and months, looking for these people's bodies, and they never found them. So the investigators were like, if Israel would have never admitted to that, they would still not know. Israel, when he was in there being investigated and was getting ready to go to trial, he escaped at one point, and then they got him back, put him back in jail. But his whole thing was he knew that he was going to be found guilty. He knew that. He wanted the death penalty, and he wanted it fast. And he offered the investigators that he would tell them about all of the other murders that he had and where their bodies were if they would promise that his name would not get out to the media, because he was trying to protect his daughter. If he wanted to protect his daughter, he shouldn't have done any of this. And I feel so bad for his daughter. I'm not trying to say anything bad about her. She's totally innocent in this, but it's like, dude. The investigators were able to get the media to not be in on anything and release anything to the press, and his name get released out for a while. That's how they got the information of where Samantha's body was and where Bill and Lorraine were. But then somehow, some way, word got out to the media, and then that's when he pulled back. Long story short, Israel, being the controlling person that he is and has been in all these situations, needed to control the narrative all the way to the end. He ended up getting a razor some way, somehow, and taking his own life in the jail cell. And that just devastated the investigators because they knew or believed that Israel had killed at least 11 people. At least. He only told them about the couple and Samantha. They found these kill kits. He did tell them about the kill kits. They found these kill kits all over the country. And the way that it goes is the investigators would later say that if he hadn't have told them where Samantha's body was, they would have never found it. He would have gotten away with it. If he had not gotten pulled over, he would have gotten away with it. He was never on their radar. He was never suspicious to anybody. Everybody thought he was just nice guy, nice hardworking construction guy, a doting father. And at the end of this, just like my final thoughts and opinions is one, why, I mean, I had some people in my Patreon recommend that I research this case and I just couldn't stop. Like I literally had to make myself stop researching it in order to film the video because I'm like, the video is going to be 3 hours long if I just continue on. Like I know the basis of the story, but like, why haven't I heard about this before? Why isn't it all over the place? This is so wild. And this guy, he was smarter than everybody, like in this situation. The kill kits, like who would even think of something like that? And the fact that he had the patience to plant the kits and not go back until years later in order to do what he needed to do. Oh, I shouldn't have said it like that. But you guys do what he desired to do. Oh my gosh. And his daughter, like to know that that was her father and his girlfriend, to know that that's what he was doing out back. But according to them, according to the girlfriend, we don't know their names. According to what the investigators said, the girlfriend and the daughter never suspected anything. They would have never thought anything. They said he never acted weird. It was nothing like that. And he was doing all of this. He was kidnapping people, killing them, raping them, and disposing of the bodies in ways that would never be found. Never be found. They couldn't even find the other couple's bodies where he told them where they were because it had already been demolished. And he said he knew that. It's just wild. And the thing that stuck with me that the investigators said, and I will leave the link to the Oxygen documentary that they did on him down below. It's here on YouTube. At the end of it, he said that he doesn't think that Israel killed himself because he was a monster. He knew he was a monster. He was proud to be a monster. He thinks that what he could not handle was the fact that he failed at it. And to him, getting caught was the biggest failure. So, this is one of those cases where you see somebody and you think, man, they look creepy. Okay, yeah, they look like this type of person. And then you have the other people that are completely normal, nobody that knows, and this man was getting away with this for years until he just got so hungry that he got sloppy and it all slipped away from him. What do you guys think? Have y'all heard about this story? Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. As always, my loves, thank you so much for watching this video. Please do not forget to like it. It's a free way that you can help your girl out. And until next time, I love you guys so very much. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye. Love you guys. Bye.
We are dreaming in the dark. We are nothing more than dust.